What do you do when a stranger's link opens to your wife's face on a corn site and the room tilts? How do you stay lawful when people call you jealous? The video keeps circulating and she says it was long ago. Why does your first visible document arrive only at the very end, after careful notes, quiet calendars, and one public delivery? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Lewin Ashby, and I work in hospital IT where calm is part of the job. I fix slow computers, quiet alarms, and small mistakes that could grow if no one looks. I believe the same method could keep a marriage safe. Then a stranger sent me a link. I opened it and saw my wife's face in a video on a corn site. The room felt smaller. She said it was long ago. She said I was being dramatic. I stood at the counter and set 2 mugs on opposite sides like a little fence. I told myself to breathe and use simple steps. I saved the link. I wrote the time. I took a picture of our wall calendar and the red circle I had drawn last week without knowing why. I locked a small USB in a drawer and listened to the hallway hush. At work, a censored screenshot began to move through phones. People called me jealous. I kept my voice level and said I wanted respect. I did not shout. I did not make threats. I decided I would handle this properly, with clean records and steady hands, and I would not speak more than the facts required. I stood in the kitchen and let the kettle heat until the tiny sound became steady like rain on glass. I worked in a hospital where small alarms meant real things, so I tried to treat my house the same. I placed 2 mugs on opposite sides of the counter and watched the steam rise between them like a thin wall. My phone buzzed with a link from a name I did not know. I told myself to ignore it. I tapped it anyway and saw a blurred thumbnail, then a face that was not blurred at all. It was Sera. The site watermark sat in the corner. The timestamp read years ago, but the date on the upload was new. I felt the room shrink by an inch. I did not shout. I stood still and set the phone face down. I picked it up again and opened the player with the sound off. I checked frame by frame. A lamp I remembered from a storage bin showed in the background. A small tattoo on a shoulder matched one she still had. The voice in the caption was not hers, but her mouth formed a laugh I knew. I saved the link to a plain text note, copied the timestamp, and wrote 2 letters that only I would understand. I took a slow photo of our wall planner with its red circle around this week. I did not know why I had circled it when I did. I knew why now. Sera walked in with headphones around her neck and music leaking like water from a door not closed. She asked why the kettle had not been poured. I said I needed a quiet word. I kept my voice even. I said a link had arrived. I said it showed her on a site I would not name. I said I needed context. She rolled her eyes and said it was long ago. She said I was being dramatic. She said everyone had a past and I was acting like a judge. I said I wanted respect for our name and for my work. I said I wanted truth. She said truth was boring and history was private. She said the person who sent the link was the problem, not the link. I poured water and watched the tea darken. I handed her a mug and kept mine where it was. The mug stayed on opposite sides. She called that placement a performance. I said it helped me think. She laughed and said I should put labels on the air. I said I already did at work. She said the video did not change our life. I said the video had already entered my work. I said a censored screenshot had started to move in phones. She said men feared fun, and I should relax. I said I wanted simple respect. I kept my hands at my sides. I opened a drawer and slid in a small USB stick with today's date written in neat numbers. The lock clicked in a soft, private way. My phone alarm chirped with a label that read paper drop. I dismissed it without looking at her. I told her I would be careful in my words and careful in my steps. I said I would not shout or threaten. She said I would not do anything because there was nothing to do. I said I would think, make notes, and keep breathing. The kettle cooled and the room smelled like tea and dust. In the bedroom, I set a shirt across the chair and looked at the guest blanket folded at the foot of the bed. The fold line was not straight. I did not touch it. I sat on the edge and opened my laptop. A small spreadsheet lived on the desktop with only dates and 2 letter marks. I added one entry with the time the link arrived and another with the time I saved the note. I wrote nothing that would sound like a threat. I wrote nothing that could not be read aloud at a table. The cursor blinked like a pulse. I saved and minimized the screen when I heard her step in the hall. She leaned on the door frame and said I was going to ruin a good night with boring questions. I said questions kept bridges standing. She said I should try living instead of auditing. I said living needed clean beams. She said no one would care by morning. I said the internet moved in circles, not lines. She said I was making poetry, and it did not suit me. I said I was making a plan to protect my name. I kept my voice low. I did not look away. I went back to the kitchen and wiped the counter until the wood felt even. I put a sticky note into my wallet that read "Bring forms." I did not write what forms. I listened to the hallway and caught the faint hum of a shredder start and stop in the spare room. I walked that way and saw nothing on the floor, only a clean bin and a coil of cord. I did not ask questions I did not need answers for yet. I returned to the kettle and poured more hot water to warm the mugs again. On my phone, I took a photo of the top corner of our clipboard where the word statement sat in clean type. There was nothing under it. There would not be for a while. I created 2 folders named Archive A and Archive B and put a copy of the wall planner photo in both. A cloud notice blinked and said, "File uploaded successfully." I turned the screen off and set the phone down like a stone that would not roll off the table. I listened to the refrigerator click and the window rattle once in the wind. I texted my sister, Mara, and typed 3 drafts. The first said I needed help. I deleted it. The second said things were messy. I deleted it. The third said, "All good." I sent that one. She sent a single heart. It stayed on the screen like a small lamp in another room. I did not call her because calling would make the air change shape in my chest before I had the right words. I made a line in my notebook with the time I had texted and the time I had received the heart. I closed the notebook and put it in a drawer. Sera asked if I was done being dramatic. I said I was done for tonight. She said good, because she wanted to sleep without a lecture. I said I wanted to sleep too. I turned out the kitchen light and left the mugs where they stood. I checked the door and the lock, then stood still and listened for another shredder hum. The house was quiet. I turned toward the bedroom and paused at the hall mirror. My face looked like a person who needed rest and rules in the same measure. I took one breath and let it out through my nose. I lay down on the far side of the bed and looked at the ceiling. I counted to 20 and thought about the lamp in the video and the tattoo I already knew. I told myself to keep my steps clean and my words short. I told myself to collect signs the way I collected alarms at work. I closed my eyes and felt sleep come like a door that did not want to open. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. The screen lit and showed a message banner from a contact saved under a single emoji. The preview line began with "See you" and then faded as the banner slid up. Text preview instantly deleted. Morning at the hospital began with the soft beep of monitors down the hall and the steady hum of vents. I swiped in, set my bag under the desk, and woke my workstation. The login screen reflected a face that looked like it had slept but not rested. I reminded myself to be useful first and worried second. Tickets waited in the queue, keyboards needed dust blown out, printers wanted drivers they could trust. I opened the dashboard, made a plan for the first hour, and let the work pull my hands into motion. The first ping came from the team chat. A coworker posted a censored screenshot he said he found on a forum that collects jokes. The image was blurred just enough to pretend it decency. The caption called it old news. A few laughing reactions stacked beneath it like bottle caps. I watched my cursor stop moving. I kept my face still, then placed the mouse down and checked the room. Victor grinned at his screen and said a meme moves faster than a bus. He said it as if he were telling the weather. I said the network would run a bit slower if the chat kept attaching images. He looked over and said I should relax, that nothing was personal. I said I needed the bandwidth for patches. I opened a new window and minimized it when Victor stood to refill his cup. The minimized window held a plain text note with times and 2 letter marks. I pulled the chat pane to the far edge and clicked the 3 dots next to the image. I pressed mute on the conversation for 1 hour and returned to the ticket queue. The printer in pediatrics spooled and jammed. I walked over with a small kit, cleared the tray, and replaced the paper. The jammed strip looked like a blank wave. I thought about empty noise trying to look like signal. I slid the tray back and waited for the ready light to return. When I came back to the workroom, my phone lit with a contact saved under a single emoji. The preview line began with "saw the link," then the banner drew itself away. I did not open it. I set the phone face down. A calendar reminder nudged my screen. Meeting. Personal 7:35 p.m. I let it live there for a few seconds, then swiped it away. I made one tiny entry in a spreadsheet, the kind that means nothing to anyone else. The column had a date, a time, and 2 letters. I saved it to a folder labeled Archive A and mirrored it into Archive B. A cloud pop-up blinked and said, "File uploaded successfully." I closed the notice and took a breath. Rhea from HR appeared at the door with a calm expression she reserves for policy and kindness. She asked if I had a minute later for a quick word about general social guidelines and chats. She kept it neutral and open. I said yes, and that I would come by after I cleared the next ticket. She thanked me and did not step into the room. She keeps the doorway as a boundary so the chat cannot make a story out of a closed door. I appreciated that choice. Before lunch, I ran a patch on the oncology desk phones. While the installer did its work, I opened the general policy page and read the section about online conduct and workplace respect. I did not download anything, I did not print anything. I only read and let the sentences float down through me like cool water. I thought about tone. I thought about the difference between a joke and a jab, and how a jab uses laughter like padding. I wrote a single new line in my pocket notebook. Tone multiplied by audience equals shape. I closed the notebook and returned to the phones. At noon, I walked to HR. The hallway outside their office always smells faintly like paper and lemon wipes. Rhea stood by the door and kept her voice even. She said videos can take on a life of their own, even when they are old or out of context. She said the hospital expects everyone to avoid sharing content that could embarrass a colleague. She said she would post a gentle reminder to the team about captions and respect. She asked if I needed to file anything. I said not at this time. I said I was keeping things professional and just wanted the chatter to cool. She nodded and said she understood. She asked if I needed a minute in the quiet room. I said I needed air. I left the building and walked to the riverside embankment. The day was bright, but the wind had bite. The water moved with the patience of a large thing that does not need to hurry. I stood with both hands on the rail and let my chest find a steady pace. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Sera had posted a story. It said it was long ago and I should relax. The comments below it stacked with hearts and winks. Ellen added one that said, "Boys fear shadows." I watched the river carry a leaf along the surface and lose it under ripples. I told myself to name my needs in short words. Sera called and asked if I was done being dramatic. I said I wanted respect for my name and for my work not to carry her story. She said I loved rules more than people. I said rules kept people from falling. She said everyone had a past and I needed to stop policing history. I said the present was already changed by the past she posted. I said I would not have this talk in front of our friends or at my job. I said I would handle things properly and I would be calm. She said calm was a mask for control. I told her I was going back inside to finish my shift. I ended the call and wrote the time on a small card. On my way back, a volunteer by the fountain asked if I needed directions. I said I knew where I was going. The hospital doors slid open and the scent of hand gel replaced river air. At my desk, the team chat had grown more polite, likely because a reminder had gone out. Victor sent a message that said he meant nothing by it earlier. He added a thumbs up and a line about deleting the clip. I typed thanks and did not add more. I moved 3 tickets to resolved and cleared a small error that liked to reappear after long weekends. By late afternoon, the workroom felt quiet, in a way only a busy place can achieve when every hand is moving. I cleaned my tools, coiled cables, and checked that the backup drives showed green. I placed a small USB stick with today's date in my pocket and touched the edge with my thumb. It felt like a key to a door I had not opened yet. I slid it back next to my badge. My phone vibrated in my pocket again with an unknown number flagged as private. I let it go dark on its own. I would not answer voices that hid. Before I left, I created a calendar entry for the next day titled Storage Stop 9:15 a.m. and another titled Pickup Forms 3:20 p.m. They were ordinary words in a world that likes loud ones. I closed my laptop and looked at the reflection in the black screen. I looked like a man counting steps on a narrow bridge. I picked up my bag and turned toward the corridor. A figure in the doorway lifted a hand. Rhea waited with that same calm expression that makes rooms safer. She inclined her head toward her office door, not pushing, just marking the offer. The workroom printers began a small run, spooling pages for the evening shift. I paused and realized I could either let the chat write the next line of my day, or I could put a boundary on paper in a neutral room with a neutral person. I nodded once and stepped that way, keeping my pace even. The manager asked for a quick word. The community center hall smelled like floor polish and paper banners. People stacked chairs against a wall and set up a long folding table for snacks. A small stage stood at one end with a tired microphone on a stand. I came early and offered to test the sound system. The speaker crackled, then found a clean tone. I told the organizer the cord should sit under the tape, not across the walkway. She thanked me and said I always notice small things. I took a place near an exit sign so I could breathe if the room turned loud. I kept my hands at my sides and my phone on silent. Sera arrived with light steps and a smile that asked for attention before words asked for it. She wore the kind of color that looks good in photos. Ellen followed, already talking about how people need to move on from old stories. A neighbor from our building waved across the hall and glanced at my face like she was checking a weather app. Victor was by the punch bowl, phone in hand, finding angles. I nodded to him. He nodded back. He looked at Sera and then at the small stage. I knew what he was thinking without hearing it. The MC tapped the microphone and asked for a quick welcome. People drifted toward the front and formed a half circle. I stood at the far edge by the exit sign. The mic squeaked once, then settled. The MC asked if anyone had something funny to share before the music started. 2 teens told a short story about a dog in a costume. A teacher followed with a line about field trips. Then someone called Sera's name. The crowd turned toward her like iron turns toward a magnet. She lifted a hand as if to say it was no big thing and walked to the mic. She said old videos can feel like shadows at noon. She said a person should not be judged by a past that had already aged. She said her husband hated jokes. She did not say my name. She did not have to. A small laugh moved across the half circle. She added that art takes many forms and that people who work in hospitals should learn to breathe. She said it like it was wise and light at once. I felt the laugh come back stronger and hit my chest. I counted to 5 and kept my feet still. Victor had his phone up the whole time. The camera lens glinted under the hall lights. 2 others raised phones to catch the confession, because that word attracts cameras even when the scene is thin. I watched the red light of one recording blink beside a paper snowflake taped to the wall. I thought about how light things can carry heavy things when the room agrees to it. I took a breath and let it out slow. The chant began near the snack table. People wanted a toast. The MC fished a paper cup from a stack and handed it to Sera. Someone yelled for me to join her on the stage. I shook my head once and kept my place. I did not trust the stage to hold weight that was not mine. Sera said the past was not a crime and that men should smile more. The circle laughed again. Ellen clapped with the rhythm of a person who knows how to push a crowd. Garth looked at the floor. He rubbed a knuckle and said nothing. I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. The lock screen showed a group chat ping with a thumbnail of Sera at the mic and the caption Old Art, New Laughs. I swiped the notice away without opening the thread. My fingers found the smooth edge of a small card in my pocket notebook. The top page held one word, statement. The rest of the page was blank. I did not write. I did not need to yet. I watched the half circle tighten. After the chant ended, the music came up from someone's playlist. People spread out to the corners, talking by 2s and 3s. I stepped to the water cooler and poured a small cup. Victor joined me and said he had posted a loop to the community chat. He said it was harmless, just a vibe. I said I hoped the captions would be kind. He said the internet made its own decisions. I said decisions still had authors. He looked down at his shoes and said he got caught in the moment. I said we all do sometimes. He nodded and walked away. Sera came by and asked if I planned to smile at any point tonight. I said I planned to be steady. She said steady looked like stone and stones bored people. I said people could be safe on stones. She said safety was a fear word. I said safety kept children from falling off stages. She looked toward the teens by the mic and rolled her eyes. I did not follow her gaze. I folded the empty cup in half, then in quarters, and put it in the trash. Near the door, the neighbor adjusted her scarf and watched me and Sera in a way that said she was storing 2 angles, his and hers. She did not smile. She did not frown. She catalogued. I recognized the look because I have it too. The music dropped into a song people knew, and a small group sang the chorus at the wrong pitch. The noise was not mean, but it made space for jokes. Jokes arrive when space is made. I checked my phone to confirm the time. Another group chat ping stacked under the first. A slow-motion clip of Sera's toast with a caption that said, "Time is a circle." The clip had a small crown filter that someone thought was funny. I pressed the power button and turned the screen black. The hall lights buzzed once and then steadied. I looked up at the exit sign and let the green letters anchor me. I left without making a speech and walked to the supermarket for milk and bread. The fluorescent lights were too bright after the warm hall. The floor tiles reflected shoe bottoms like a shallow pool. In the checkout lane, the cashier had her phone propped between the register and a sign about club prices. The screen flashed the same loop of Sera at the mic. My tie tip was visible in the lower corner like proof of attendance. The caption under it said, "He looks like a statue." The cashier looked from the phone to my face and back. She did not comment. I said good evening and asked for a bag. She said I could save 5 cents without one. I said I would carry it. The receipt printer spooled a strip of paper and paused, as if considering the moment. The motor hummed and then pushed the rest out in a short cough. I thought about the bar printer yesterday and how different rooms can make the same small noise when they record a fact. I folded the receipt once and slid it into my wallet behind a sticky note that read, "Bring forms." I thanked the cashier and stepped aside so the next person could move forward. Outside, the neighbor from the hall stood under the awning with her tote bag. The rain had started, light and cold. She lifted her phone and stared at the screen for a long beat. She looked up at me and studied my face. She did not ask a question. She did not need to. The phone buzzed in her hand. She typed quickly. I felt my own phone vibrate. A screenshot arrived with my name in the line below the loop and a caption that turned a room into a verdict. I watched the image shrink to the preview square. It was the same hall, the same mic, the same color of Sera's dress. The file name said IMG, and then numbers. My chest tightened and then loosened again. I started walking home with the bag in my left hand and the phone heavy in my right pocket. The crosswalk sign blinked from red hand to white figure. The street smelled like wet stone. I counted my steps from one corner to the next. I told myself I would not reply. I told myself I would write one line at the desk and put the phone face down. I told myself I would keep the circle small until I had the right words. Group chat pings with a new loop. Neighbor stares, then sends a screenshot. The park smelled like cut grass and warm bark. Swings creaked, and a small dog pulled a child toward the slide. I chose a bench near the shade and waited for Mara and Noah. They came with paper cups of lemonade, the kind that leaves sugar on the lip. Mara asked if I wanted the quiet seat or the talk seat. I said, the quiet seat. She sat next to me and let the cup sweat onto the bench. Noah ran straight to the swing, dragged it back, and launched forward with a practiced kick. He shouted that he wanted higher, then asked if I could push. I stood behind him and pressed the chain with 2 fingers each time, steady and small. He asked why people laughed at me on phones. I said sometimes people laugh when they do not understand. He asked if they were bad. I said they were careless. He asked if careless hurt as much as bad. I said it can. Mara told me she had seen the loop from the community hall and had put her phone away mid-play. She said she would not add to the views. She said she would not comment. She asked if I had slept. I said I had set 2 mugs on opposite counters and tried. She nodded like she could picture the kitchen and the space between the cups. She said I did not have to explain anything to her. I said I would keep it simple. I said I wanted respect for my name and my work. She said she understood. She said I could set the pace and she would meet it. Noah dragged his shoes on the wood chips to stop the swing and turned to ask if I was sad. I said I was steady. He tested the word by saying it under his breath, then asked what steady felt like. I said steady felt like a bridge that does not move when trucks pass. He nodded and kicked off again. After the park, the plan was a family lunch at a long table. The restaurant smelled like basil and soap. The table was already set with folded napkins and tall bottles of water. Ellen sat near the center, where voices collect. Garth faded 1 seat back, where escape routes live. Sera smiled for a photo with her mother and lifted her chin as the camera clicked. I chose a chair near the corner, close to a service station where servers refilled glasses. Cousins filed in and compared phones. A nephew announced he had found a better filter for last night's clip. I watched the server carry plates and decided to match her pace. Quick hands, quiet feet, no spill. The loop arrived at the table without anyone saying its name. A cousin pressed play and slid the screen toward another cousin and then to an aunt. The caption had changed to something that called me stone. The word collected laughs like a magnet gathers pins. Ellen said people needed to move on, especially men who hold grudges over old art. She did not look at me when she said it. Sera said the past did not belong to the present. She said I was making it heavy. I answered softly that my name lived in the present and my work stood in this town. I said respect in public mattered more than wins and comments. Ellen called me prudish. She said life was fun if you let it be. Garth picked up his fork and then put it down. He said old films still made new fires and then stared at his plate. I kept my hands still in my lap. I named plates in my head like I named devices at work: pasta, salad, bread, water, knife, fork. I turned a napkin edge with 2 fingers until it formed a small triangle. I did not reach for the phones. I did not call for silence. I heard the room at large continue, other tables talking about birthdays and soccer and rent. My phone buzzed once in my pocket with a calendar ping, then stopped. I let it stop. When the server refilled water, I thanked her, and she looked at me like she understood something and could not say it. Dessert came as slices with tidy edges. A child at the far end of the table asked why adults made jokes about people who were sitting right there. The question stalled the talk for a breath. Ellen said jokes were love in bright clothes. I watched Sera scroll under the table with her thumb and tilt the phone so the screen faced her only. My chest felt tight like a belt 1 hole too close. I counted to 5 and saw the belt loosen. After lunch, Ellen said she needed a cream from the pharmacy and asked who would walk with her. Sera said she would, and I said I would carry the bag. We crossed the street and the doors opened with a chime. The pharmacy smelled like paper, sugar mints, and new plastic. The line was 4 people long. A display near the counter offered greeting cards with shiny balloons on the front. Ellen took a card and said this one had the right message for people who refuse to live. She placed it back without buying. She told me I should stop embarrassing Sera with rules. She said women leave men who fear attention. I said I did not fear attention. I said I wanted respect. She said respect was a word men use when they want control. I said I used it at work when I did not want servers to crash. She rolled her eyes and asked the clerk about the sale on the cream. While we waited, my phone buzzed with a call labeled private. I let it ring and fade. I put on my headphones without sound, a trick that keeps talkers away. Sera looked at my headphones and smiled like she had won a small game. I did not meet her eyes. I looked at a rack of sunscreen and saw my own face in the bent mirror. It looked tired, but it looked like me. The receipt printer coughed out a strip for the person ahead of us and jammed. The clerk pulled gently and freed it. I watched the paper fold and then lie flat. I thought about how every room has its own way of recording a moment and how some records are only noise wearing shape. Outside, the parking lot had a low wind. A flyer under a cartwheel made a flapping sound like a weak bird. Ellen told Sera that men who fix machines try to fix people and never learn. She told me to be fun or be alone. Garth stood behind her and said jokes can build habits, and habits can burn houses. He said it quiet, then looked at me until I nodded. Ellen told him to stop being dramatic. He shrugged like a person who had tried to warn a cliff not to be a cliff. We walked toward the car, and Noah ran from Mara's sedan across 3 parking spaces to reach us. He stopped short in front of me and lifted his hands like he wanted to be picked up but was not sure. He asked if the people on the internet were our friends. I said some were, and most were not. He asked if they could make a person cry. I said they could make a person feel small if a person let them. He asked if I was small now. I went down on one knee. I said I was steady. He looked into my face until he believed me or wanted to. He asked if I would come to the park again tomorrow. I said yes. We got into our cars, doors thudding like quiet stamps. I drove home on side streets and watched the lights change without trying to beat the red. At the building, I stood on the balcony and moved one photo into Archive A and another copy into Archive B. A soft pop-up said, "File uploaded successfully and faded like a breath on glass." I slipped the phone back into my pocket and listened to the city stack its evening noises in careful layers. A child asks a painful question. Night leaned on the balcony rail like a quiet visitor. I stood with my hands flat on the cold metal and watched windows blink on across the street. I unlocked my phone and moved a fresh photo into Archive A, then mirrored it into Archive B. A small cloud pop-up said file uploaded successfully and slid away. I opened the gallery and hid a picture of a document corner between old beach shots. Only the top edge showed, nothing readable. I closed the gallery and placed the phone face down on the table. Inside the apartment, a drawer opened and shut. I listened for a second and let it be. At the kitchen counter, I wrote a sticky note that said, "Bring forms." I folded it once and slipped it behind my ID in the wallet. I took out a thin binder labeled Utilities. It was thicker than bills should make it. I did not add anything to it. I only touched the edge to remind myself it existed. I opened the laptop and kept the brightness low. A spreadsheet with only dates and initials waited on the screen. I added 2 small lines with quiet hands. I minimized the window when footsteps moved down the hall. The screen showed the desktop again. Clean tree, 2 folders, Archive A and Archive B. I set my headphones next to the keyboard, off and ready. Sera came in and said people were finally laughing the right way. She said time heals and men learn. I said I was making dinner. She said I should make a joke. I said I would finish the pasta and then go for a walk. She rolled her eyes and scrolled as she left the room. I poured water into a pot and watched the first bubble lift to the surface and pop without sound. I wrote a line on a small card that said tone, low, volume, low, steps, counted. Later, I went to the co-working space because the lobby there gave me neutral air. The front desk plant leaned toward the glass. A child in a red coat counted his footsteps on the tile and laughed at the echo. I took a seat by the window and put my headphones on. I did not play music. I opened my calendar and added 3 entries. Storage stop 9:15 a.m., pickup forms 3:20 p.m., the meeting, personal 8:05 p.m. I set each reminder to vibrate and then fade. I searched storage options, delivery tracking, and notary near me in 3 tabs and then closed them. I left no bookmarks. I placed a small USB stick with today's date on the table and turned it once, then taped a spare under the flap inside my bag. The motion felt like putting a jack under a car before you change a tire. My phone vibrated. Victor sent a short message that said he had deleted the loop and was sorry. He called it hype that got away from him. I typed thank you and left it there. A new comment on Sera's story popped up from a name I knew from before me. Mason. He wrote a line with a wink that said some films age well. I stared at the words until they went flat. I took a breath and wrote the time on my card. I did not answer him. I did not write to Sera. I closed the app and put the phone face down again. Mara texted and asked if I wanted soup after her late shift. I said yes. She wrote, "Do it clean." I sent a single heart. Ellen posted hearts under Sera's newest story and wrote "Boys Fear Fun." I let the notification pass without touching it. Garth sent nothing. The silence from him had a weight that fit in a pocket. On the way home, I stopped at the small shop and bought one envelope. I did not seal it. I placed it in our hall outbox next to a stack of flyers. It looked like a prop from a play that was still in rehearsal. I walked to the desk and opened the locked drawer. The metal tongue clicked back with a tiny sound like a camera shutter. Inside, the USB with today's date lay next to the notebook with times and 2 letters. I closed the drawer and heard the click return to its place. Sera stood in the living room with the TV lighting her face. She said everyone was calming down. She said I should post a fun picture so people would stop calling me Stone. I said I would not feed the circle. She said I was making her look bad by being quiet. I said I would be clear about what I could accept. I said I would not be part of jokes that use my name. She said I was threatening. I said I was planning. She said plans were dull. I said dull lines keep bridges standing. She laughed and looked back at the TV. I went to the balcony again because the night keeps its voice level. I set my phone on the table and opened the clean file tree once more. Archive A. Archive B. I checked both. I closed both. A faint smell of toner from earlier moved through the room. A ghost of a printer in a different building on a different day. I lifted the utilities binder, put it down, and slid it a finger width to the left so I would see it in the morning. I placed the headphones over my ears, still silent. The world softened by a layer. I could hear my own breath and the soft hum of the refrigerator through the door. The door latch clicked as Sera walked into the hall. I minimized the screen on reflex and looked at nothing on purpose. She asked if I planned to stay on the balcony all night. I said I planned to sleep. She said I should stop acting like a judge. I said I was acting like a person who wanted dignity. She asked if I thought dignity made dinner. I said dignity kept homes from breaking. She shook her head and went to the bedroom. I waited until the latch clicked again. I opened the laptop and typed 3 words on the blank page under the word statement, keep it clean. I deleted the words and closed the file. I called Mara and let it ring once, then ended the call before it connected. I did not need to talk yet. I only needed the feeling of a line that could hold if I grabbed it. I set a new calendar entry called Paper Drop 11:10 a.m. because the label calmed me. I stood still in the doorway and looked at the mugs on opposite counters. They had dried in place. I left them as they were. In the bedroom, I placed the guest blanket back into a square and let it sit at the foot of the bed. I put my wallet with the sticky note on the dresser where I would see it at dawn. I turned off the light and stood in the dark for a count of 5. The room felt steady, the way a dock feels steady when a boat bumps it and then drifts back. I walked to the hall and paused by the locked drawer. I did not open it. I did not need to. I knew what was inside and what was not. I knew the difference between a threat and a plan. I knew which one lived in this house. I went back to the kitchen and turned the mugs so their handles faced away from each other. Not like a fight, but like 2 tools resting after work. I took one slow breath and let it out. He states calmly, "I will handle this properly." The office tower lobby smelled like coffee lids and cold stone. Noon light fell in clear squares across the floor. I stood near the security desk where the printer sometimes coughed out visitor passes. The elevator bell chimed. Sera stepped out with a look that said she expected a conversation I would carry with soft hands. I kept mine at my sides. Rhea from HR crossed the lobby on her way to lunch and glanced over with a neutral nod, then moved on. I breathed once and let the air settle. A man with a badge confirmed Sera's name and handed her an envelope. His tone belonged to steps, not stories. He stated the contents: a civil complaint and a formal takedown demand regarding the circulating clip and its reposts. He said service was complete. She looked from the envelope to my face like the weight might change if I spoke. I did not. I said I would follow every process. The guard's printer beside us spooled and pushed a pass for someone else. The sound marked the moment like a stamp. Sera said this was extreme, that it was old, that I wanted control. I said I wanted respect and that I would not argue in lobbies or comments. I said the documents would speak for me now. I kept my voice level. Phones passed behind her in moving hands. The marble stayed cool under my shoes. My own screen lit with Mara's name and a single heart from the morning. I let it dim. Ellen's call blinked and vanished. I did not pick up. Sera held the envelope tight, as if the paper might soften. It did not. I turned toward the glass doors. They slid open on cue. Outside, the street sounded ordinary. I stepped forward without looking back. Papers served in public.